Okay. Well, welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. This is the last of our candidate conversations in advance of the spring election, which is tomorrow. So we're happy to have with us two candidates this morning, one for a contested position and one for uncontested. We're going to start with a conversation with Alan Cloutier, who is running for planning board, and I'll let him explain kind of how that has come to be, because it was a little bit of a left turn in the election process. But he can explain more about that. We'll use the first half of our session for that conversation, and then about halfway through we will switch to Kathryn Kelly, who we're very glad has been able to join us. Kathryn's running for a contested seat on the select board. Because neither Kathryn or Alan have appeared here before, we'll use our usual convention also of very briefly introducing ourselves, so those two folks can get a sense of who's in the room, but we want to preserve as much time for conversation as possible. So try to be pretty brief in your introductions. And I think that's pretty much the logistics. Martin, you want to start with the folks at MetroWorks?
Sure. Yeah, well, I'll start with myself this time. Martin Kessel. I'm the unofficial co-host out here at MetroWorks, and been on town meeting for several decades, and chair the Open Space Advisory Committee also for over 20 years.
I'm Cindy Bates, a 5-year resident of Natick, trail steward for the CWAP Trail, and keep Natick beautiful picker-upper.
Hey there, I'm Judy Dixon. I am the housing equity advocate from Family Promise Metro West. I have also worked in the town, in the school department, in the recreation department, and in nonprofit funded through the Department of Early Education and Care. That's it. Thank you.
Morning, I'm Gary Schulman, been a resident of Natick for 23 years. Natick Rotary. I've had my kids go through the Natick school system and just doing a little bit more stuff around town over the past year.
And I'm Kerry Butfield, 22-year resident, a Natick former town meeting member, treasurer for Keep Natick Beautiful, Repair Cafe guy, and all-around environmentalist.
And that's it for MetroWorks.
Great, thanks. Elaine.
Elaine Ostroff, longtime advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities, mother, grandmother, executive director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design, and I really appreciate these Monday mornings where I meet new people.
Thanks, Elaine.
Old people that I appreciate.
Great, thanks. Paul.
Good morning. I'm the Paul Carew, Director of Veteran Services for the town of Natick, past state leader of VSOs, and I'm a Natick resident now for 64 years.
Wow, thanks, Paul. Kathleen.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Donovan. I'm a Natick resident for 34 years. I'm on the library's Board of Trustees, and I also volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful.
Thanks, Kathleen. Pat.
Good morning. I'm Pat Conaway, Keep Natick Beautiful. Been in Natick for about 55 years.
Great, thanks, Pat. Jianqi.
Good morning, everybody. Jianqi Monar, and I'm a resident of Natick 27 years ago. But I just take this opportunity to say many thank you for Doug and Sarah to organizing this and to volunteering for this Monday coffee meeting, because I learned much more from my community during this last year, during these coffee hours, than I learned in 27 years. Thank you.
Thanks. Tom.
Hi there. Good morning. My name's Tom Daly. I'm a 35-year resident of Natick. I volunteer with Echo Natick and Spark Kindness. Welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Ricky?
I'm Erica Ball, also known as Ricky. I was the first select woman of the town of Natick back. I am celebrating my anniversary at this election. 50 years ago, I was elected the first time. And frankly, I'm a little nostalgic. I served 3 terms. I'm a 64-year resident of the town of Natick. I was president of the League of Women Voters when we had a League of Women Voters, and I'm nostalgic about that too. I think we could use it nowadays. I served 3 terms on the Board of Selectmen. I served for 12 years on the Housing Authority. I served for 40 years at town meeting. I'm a founder of the Center for Arts, commonly known as TCAN. And I'm proud of the various activities that I was there at the beginning, like the neighborhood bus, like the Natick Extended Day After School program. There are many things that I've been involved in over the years, and I miss Natick. So I'm still here and I'm still working on affordable housing.
We miss you too, Ricky. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Carol Berkowitz.
Good morning. I'm Carol Berkowitz. I'm a proud dear friend of Erica Ball, and I've lived, I said, over 50 years, and I was a special educator in Framingham for 30 years, town meeting member, and a proud member of Coffee with a Purpose.
Thanks, Carol. Sally?
Good morning. I'm Sally Hopkins. I've lived here for about 8 years now. I'm part of Keep Natick Beautiful. I have no choice. I'm hooked on Keep Natick Beautiful. With my brother Pat Conway. But I'd also like to say that Coffee with a Purpose is it's a joy because it's a nice way to start the week. And Doug and Sarah and Mark, my
Right.
and our wonderful guy down at the center who just spoke. I'm losing the names. And anyway, thank you all.
Thanks, Sally. You need coffee. Sarah.
Hi, I'm, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, yes.
I am Sarah Hannah, Doug's wife. I apologize for being off camera. I'm recovering from knee surgery and can't sit in a hard chair for an hour and a half. I am a retired geologist, been on town meeting for 20 something years, currently on the Community Preservation Committee, and kind of all around interested in Natick person. Thanks for being here, you guys.
Thanks, Sarah. Bruce? Bruce currently on mute. We know Bruce. Oh,
sorry. I didn't expect to say anything, but I'm Bruce Evans. I'm currently on the select board. I was on finance committee for 12 years. Before that, I've been in Natick going on 30 years. I also coach youth sports, which is, I think, my real passion in life, and it gets me out of the house, so it's good. All right, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. And Kathryn, just for your benefit, when we have cases where other candidates are on that are running for the same position, we ask that they not engage in discussion, unless they're name checked in the discussion. So have no fear there. Donna?
Good morning. I'm a longtime Natick resident. I'm an educator, kind of community servant, longtime town meeting member of Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, founding member of Black Lives Belong, on an advisory committee for the Natick Service Council. I could go on. I think I'm doing too much. Anyway, but I served 2 terms on school committee and I'm hoping for a third, but it's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Brinley?
Good morning. I'm the 25-year resident of Natick. 2 kids, one just through the school system, the other one in the high school. I am a town meeting member. Generally just a general activist around town. Love to know what's going on and stay in touch. And I'm really grateful that you're both here today so that we can hear from you. It's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brinley. And then I've got a Zoom participant that's listed as Carol's iPad. Do we know who's there? They may be away from their computer, so we'll skip over them. Okay. So thanks for those introductions, everybody. And yeah, let me turn it over to you, Alan. I think, we'd love to hear your take on I think for some of us, what the planning board is and does, how it is that you're, as I say, it seems to me there's kind of a two-stage election for you here. We had to have that special election. Perhaps you can explain about that and take some time, and then we'll take questions and answers, and we'll try to switch at about 9:45 or so over to Kathryn.
Okay, I don't know if I need even that much time. I don't know if I got that much interesting stuff going on. But my name is Alan Cloutier. I have been in Natick. It'll be 20 years in July. So been maybe not quite as long as some of the other people in this group, but I'm getting there. I have 3 kids. They're all currently in the Natick school system. One's at Kennedy and 2 at the high school right now. Soon one will be out. So it's exciting times for us around here. I'm currently the associate member of the planning board. I was elected to that in September, which had to be a special election because I was going to be a write-in candidate. I was planning to be a write-in candidate on the one earlier in the year, but it wasn't posted on the ballot. So they had one same time during the Democratic and Republican primary. So at least people didn't have to kind of get out of the house an additional time and get to the polling locations. So I've been serving as the associate member since then. But now actually one of the full board member seats is coming up. Glenn Platner currently serves that seat. He is not running for re-election. So I thought I would run for the open seat for there. So I took out the papers and looks like I was the only one.
Okay. Let's start. What is it that interests you in the planning board? What is it about what they're doing that you want to be involved in?
It fits pretty well into what I've been doing for really the last 25 years in my career. Is I'm a traffic engineer, so I deal with roadway and transportation. Not just I tend to do more of the public work now, where it's roadways, intersections that we're trying to improve and upgrade. But I've also done a lot of private work where it's doing a traffic study for a development that is trying to go. In fact, I think back in the day I did the one for Dick's Sporting Goods a long time ago. And actually, that's even kind of how I even found my way into Natick. Was years ago. I was working at a company, and I was actually doing a peer review for the traffic work on behalf of the mall expansion. So I was looking at figures and volume figures of Natick before I was even planning on moving here, which kind of gave me a little bit of a background into the town a little bit when me and my wife started kind of looking to get a house. So I kind of knew a little bit more about it, more on the numbers basis than the actual, the inner workings or, how the schools were. And then we kind of found our way out to Natick. So a lot of the planning board, we deal with, especially for larger developments, site plan review, identifying the impacts of the project. We haven't had too many big ones really since I've been on it. Although back in the day I've been in front of it. So, but some of that reviewing the site plans, trying to make things better. Usually developers come in and they have stuff, but it usually can use some improvement. So I've been interested in looking at that stuff, offering suggestions, which usually they take up on that. So kind of fits what I do. So
Yeah.
And I kind of like to give back, help the town. I saw an open position, thought they could use some help, and that's where I am.
I was counting on the ballot yesterday that when you add in all the town meeting members and as well as all these other offices, there's over 75 people running, let alone writing candidates. Your thought about just, hey, maybe there's a way I can help out at that syncs with the volunteer spirit in Natick, I think. There's, oh, I thought there was somebody named Paul trying to come in. But I guess
Yeah,
he's
he
gone away.
seems.
Yeah. Do folks in the room or on the call have questions or comments? Yeah, Carrie, I see your hands up.
Yeah, two questions for you. First one, do you know Barry Pell? I know did some traffic studies here in Natick some time ago.
I'm sorry, what's that?
You know a fellow named Barry Pell?
I haven't run across him, no.
I did a lot of traffic studies when, here in
Okay.
Natick years ago. He was a neighbor of mine in Brighton, and I knew he made the commute out here. More importantly, I saw they finally sort of did a quick pave job at Speen and 135 there to make that, get rid of the, landmines there. A bigger question was, maybe they had an opportunity to, through eminent domain or something, take some property in front of CVS and create a third lane there, because as you probably know, I've traveled down there a lot, there's a line of traffic goes out to the dog park quite often, sometimes of the day. I know there's water bodies at some of the corners there that might present a problem, but is there any plans in the future to maybe create a third lane there for right-only turns?
I mean, that'd be probably a better question with DPW. I don't think there are any plans, except I know there was a memo that was actually done by a former coworker of mine that looked at that intersection a while, and that's really the next thing you could do to improve capacity. Actually, if we're good, I don't know if anybody's driven through there lately, they probably have noticed, if you look up, you'll see a little dome camera. Those were actually done by Mass DOT, and I actually worked on that project, not on behalf, it was the Mass DOT bottleneck project where they're trying to reduce local bottlenecks. So there's really 4 intersections on Route 135. It was at Washington, Speen, Mill, and then Kendall Lane. The town applied for the grant, Ken Mitchell from the fire department, and Mass DOT actually had my firm look at it, and we identified a bunch of improvements. So those 4 intersections, they have really nice detection, good controllers now, trying to operate as efficiently as they can with the lanes that they have. I mean, Speen Street, it would be great if you had more than one lane coming up from the south. But under the geometric, squeeze that you have there, right now they're operating better than they were prior to September. But the next level is additional lanes.
That's not gonna happen.
We got two questions over here at MetroWorks, Judy and then me.
Hi, I was wondering, I'm excited about the legislation that will allow ADUs by right now, in communities across the Commonwealth. And I was wondering what your take is on that legislation and what you see as the strengths and the challenges that we'll face as a community as those roll out where they benefit families and households.
I'm sorry, what use? I don't think I heard you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm asking a question about the new legislation which permits ADUs by right across the Commonwealth. I'm curious.
Accessory dwelling units, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First, I thought you said EV, so I was going to give a very different answer.
And I'm curious about what your take is on that legislation and what you see might be the strengths and challenges of that as they roll out in our community.
I haven't seen the legislation itself, but in general, it sounds like it could be a good chance for people to kind of, as they get older, kind of say living at essentially the same property where they were as, the younger generation kind of, moves into their house. I think that's kind of the benefit, right, of people to kind of stay in Natick, stay where they always were. So challenges, well, obviously, making sure everything fits really for the most part. Obviously, there's usually some issues with people concerned about changes to anything really. So
Thank you.
Thanks. Ricky, I think Ricky actually had her hand up before you, Martin, so maybe we could let her jump in and then we'll go to you. Yeah. Ricky, you just got to come off mute. Well, got to find the mute. So maybe while she's doing that, Martin, you could jump in.
Here, okay. Yeah, actually, I got a couple of questions lined up, but I'll space them out if other people have any. The first is I think one of the exciting, I'm looking over at the table, but Alan isn't at the table, up there, okay. One of the, I think, exciting issues that's coming up in Natick is going to be the West Natick development. And I haven't heard much new on that in the last year or so, but is the planning board like really going to be in the forefront of developing that plan, or is that more in the community development office? And what are your ideas on how that can play out? I mean, I guess I can probably say up front that as chair of the Open Space Advisory Committee, we think it's important that Natick get more housing. And the best way to do that is really to have more high density, so you're not, paving over the open space. But we also have thought that there's a good possibility of getting some pocket parks or something that will benefit the new neighborhoods in West Natick if we do get that housing.
Excuse me.
We've discussed that a little bit in some of our meetings, but it's not to the stage where we don't have any articles in the town meeting coming up. It definitely did not have enough time for that. So maybe in the fall. But yeah, exactly. And not just more density. I guess it's the best locations for high density. And putting something really close to the commuter rail makes a lot of sense, because those are people that then are not driving. I mean, a percentage of them might, but people who could just walk over to the train station, that really improves things for really everybody, rather than, getting on the roads and, increasing congestion. That's where it makes the most sense to have the high density. Obviously, we need to make sure we're doing that smartly and carefully. So I think as we've been looking at that, it's not going to be just, one mass of all of West Natick. They're all going to be the same, because, I mean, there's a lot of different areas over there where you have, single family residential kind of stuck in between large parcels. So we got a lot to do there, and we are starting to take a look at it, but we've still got a lot of work to do.
What is
Great.
the
Before you move to your other question, I see Ricky did get off mute. So Ricky, do you
Yeah, actually, Doug, can I just
sure.
pull up for a second? We have a couple of people over here at Metro Works who were looking for some background, and what are we talking about West Natick? It's the MBTA communities, so maybe Alan can explain what the background of the MBTA communities
That I understand.
and so forth.
What I
Well,
want to know is.
two things, and they're kind of related. So the MBTA has their MBTA Communities Act, where you're kind of required to provide. Well, actually, you're not required to provide the housing, but by right zoning, there has to be a certain number of units that can be placed within a certain proximity to the MBTA stations. And actually, Natick already submitted their plan. Like every community, I think we're waiting to make sure we got approval. But I think Natick is in a pretty good, much better position than most communities, in that we already have some of that area zoned to take care of. Where you could have higher density. Some of it's already there, whereas some communities don't. And we obviously have the two different train stations, so that I think makes things a little bit easier. But kind of in conjunction in that, but just in general, West Natick, I think the town has been looking at what is the best future for West Natick, and not a one size fits all, but and by West Natick, we're really talking about Route 135 between the town line and ultimately Hill Street. But again, it won't be, you'll probably have essentially like 4 or 5 different sections within that.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Let's switch to.
He has something to add.
So I followed the MBTA Communities Act and Natick's progress towards our compliance very carefully in the fall. And initially, the town had a consultant that was looking at parcels on 135 that are now largely commercial parcels. And there was the thought that perhaps they could rezone those with an overlay to make them multi-use, so that if at some point those parcels, think where the dive shop is, right, that kind of thing. If at some point those parcels were to sell, that a developer could put in some dense denser housing for people with commercial on the bottom, sort of creating a village type feel there, with enhancements to the walk and bikeways along there that could be used by all residents in the area. A combination of that, there was a bit of outcry from the abutting neighborhood of single family homes. And the fact that the consultant, whatever they were supposed to come up with, did not come in on deadline, caused the Economic and Community Development Office to abandon that for now. And they were able to bring us into compliance by tweaking individual properties, I'm pointing, in the area right here in the Natick Center and the Natick Gateway. So we were able to come into legal compliance for being zoned for denser housing near a railway station by just using the downtown. But there are many in the community, many of our leaders who have expressed an interest to returning to West Natick and saying that as part of our community efforts to address the housing crisis in the Commonwealth, that we may return to that work and, you know, along with much community input, see if there is some opportunity to rezone that area.
Yeah, that's a great summary.
Yeah, thanks for all that additional info.
I'll send that over. Okay, good.
Can we go to Ricky now? Or
I guess my question is, well, I've changed it after listening to the comments about West Natick, of which I was unaware. I'm glad to know that there is a re-examination of the zoning and the use of land along 135 all the way from I would say from the dog park going back to the Framingham line on both sides. I think that land is severely under used when it comes to when you compare it to its potential for specifically for housing. And even though we're not in deficit with respect to 40B, we do have an obligation in terms of what the needs are for the Natick residents to provide local housing that is affordable. The trend, unfortunately, has been to gobble up by builders to gobble up individual lower priced housing in older developments and mansionize them. I experienced that on Russell Circle when I lived there. And I would really like to see a determined effort to combat that. My question, though, originally had to do with the role of the planning board, whether or not it is proactive in terms of looking at the master plan and trying to achieve those goals, as opposed to being generally reactive to proposals that are brought to the planning board. I understand that that part is its role, but I wonder how much of the proactive element is part of your game plan.
Yeah, and of course, I'm still kind of new, so I'm definitely still learning a lot while I'm there and learning from some of the people that have been there for a while. But I think that they have been trying to be proactive by, I mean, really trying to look at some of the zoning, some of the bylaws, so and recommending changes to the bylaws for town meetings. So we've been talking about a few of the zoning articles, just trying to clean up some of the bylaws and what's allowed. Obviously, we're not the only board that can kind of start a change to the bylaws, but we have been talking about that in a number of our meetings. Probably the less exciting parts of our meetings, and I'm sure people are turning off Pegasus when we're going into the weeds about, you know, what's zoned in certain areas. But I think we try to be, I think, fairly proactive. And then of course, you know, some of it depends on the market and what's proposed too.
Just one follow-up question. What is happening with the development, the what is it? Windy Low, those houses, that development, I don't know when it started, but it was quite a while ago. And the funds from that development for affordable housing are ones that the committee has been anticipating for a long time, but they're the pace at which the developer is going is snail pace. And what role can the planning board do to get him to measure up?
So there's actually been a lot of discussion I've been seeing all these emails back and forth between the Affordable Housing Trust and the planning board. I don't really know where that's going because I know that they're just kind of building a few of the units right now. So, or a couple of them are about to be occupied, but right, I guess all I could say is there's actually a lot of discussion right now in that, and I don't really, that was so far before I was on the board that I don't really know. I'm just kind of watching. Listening.
Well,
on.
I appreciate the learning curve and but I'm very encouraged by your background and that you fill a niche that perhaps needed filling. So thank you for running.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. So I see Pat's got his hand up and then another hand at MetroWorks. Pat?
Yeah, I was just curious, we were talking about the Route 135 potential areas. There was an award-winning design for veterans housing behind the Henry Wilson
yes
copper shack. And I was just curious if that has, I know it got stuck in because it was recreational land and, you know, the zoning issues and stuff, but I was just wondering if that has moved along somehow.
I haven't seen that yet, but thank you for everything you do over the years, by the way. A while ago, I had some Cub Scouts do some cleaning in West Natick under your, that was a while ago.
That's great. Was there another hand at MetroWorks?
Oh, you want to go first?
Yeah, you're the other one.
Oh, the traffic report, is it 5 Auburn or 9? I can't remember.
Five.
Okay. The traffic report 5 Auburn recommended some adjustments at the intersection of Pleasant and Union and Elliott Streets that would not affect, that were separate from the actual development of the school. And some of them seemed like they could be done in an hour if we just changed the settings for the timing of the lights. And others, there was one other that wouldn't have taken very much time. And I'm wondering if how that can, if there's progress being made on that, so that the folks that live in that neighborhood and are dealing with the traffic could be, that their situation could be alleviated separately from anything that might happen as part of the project.
I can take a look at that. I could try to pull up that study. That project only came, we didn't have much of a role at the planning board. I guess we were able to provide some advice for the zoning board. So we kind of had a few bits of input as far as the site plan. I can take a look at that, see if there's anything, see if I agree with the suggestions and if they'll actually make a difference.
I'm just not sure who, I've written to the select board in support of the project, and I've twice recommended that they move on those recommendations that were provided by the engineer, and like a report, probably the kind that you and your firm write, right? You do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then they made these recommendations that were for that intersection that wouldn't directly affect the development. And I don't know in this town of Natick, who do you talk to say, hey, what about moving forward on those recommendations?
Yeah, so usually that's Department of Public Works. I'll take a look at it anyways, just to make sure I agree with them, because sometimes people offer suggestions that I
okay. So
don't
if you go to the website, it's a whole separate report, like one of the appendices
Yep.
And then towards the end of that, they have their recommendations.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. Are there other questions for Alan at this point?
I could add one more, Martin
Yeah.
over here. But I guess we could probably wrap up soon too. Yeah, as I said, my big role is the Open Space Advisory Committee, and I usually appear at the planning board meetings fairly regularly, but I think during the last year or so, when you've been there, maybe not so much. There's been one big project that we've been involved in that was just wrapping up, which is Greystone, and there's another that just wrapped up, which was 218 South Main. And we were interested in both of those because they were important cluster developments that provided open space and trails. And I think you may have been on the tail end of the first one and probably were there for the second. So, I mean, as far as our committee, that's been one of the best ways of getting open space without having to really break the bank in terms of limited amount we have to buy open space. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts or experiences about getting some preservation of Natick's land in that sort of fashion by planning board decision rather than by going into the pocketbooks of the town's money, which is steadily decreasing.
No, that's a great way to do it. Bob Eisenmonger was on the planning board for years, and I had a few projects in front of him years ago, and he was great because he was really forward looking, really tried to get the open space early on. You know, developers, especially large ones, they can be very open for it, especially if that's kind of going to be the way they get their development. It's not even necessarily land that they need to use. So I definitely want to move forward with that, continuing that. And I think that was a key selling point of the 216, 218. I was in on those meetings, but I don't think my vote counted. And being associate member, I'd only have a vote if somebody was, not in on the deliberations.
That's right. Actually, that's a good point. I don't know if people realize you were up to now, you've been just an associate member and you're looking for a seat as a full member. That's correct.
Exactly. So for the associate member, I would not have a vote on any of the zoning articles, and I would only have a vote on the site plan review if somebody else was missing. And that's happening, here or there. But of course, I also have the ability to ask questions and make recommendations, which I have not hesitated to do at all.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Other hands, I see Ricky wanted to speak again. Ricky?
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce the idea of the prize-winning plan for the land behind the Henry Wilson shop. That was primarily for veterans. And if you contact Gamesh Ramachandran, he is the chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust. And it was his initiative that developed the plan in association, I think, with the Harvard School of Design. It really is a splendid plan and great land use and right by the train and within walking distance of Roach Brothers and other amenities. I would strongly urge you to take another look at that and see if you can, under today's circumstances and the new state law for housing, revive that project. It
Okay.
really is worth
I'll
doing.
contact him and see if I can get a copy of that.
I also think you can get a glimpse of it for others here at the meeting on the website for the Affordable Housing Trust. I'll see if I can get that URL while we talk.
Great.
Stanley's probably already on it.
Probably. All right. Well, thank you. This has been a great discussion. Obviously, Alan, you're running unopposed, so you didn't have to prove your case to us to get aid in your election, but it's been wonderful to hear about your interest and passion for it. And as you can tell by the dialogue, there's certainly a lot of interest and concern about planning issues from the community here. So good luck. As people have follow-up questions, the planning board all has official town email addresses, I assume, right? If people want to follow up with you about specific things, do they just look up your email there?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably on the website. It is, what is it, probably Cloutier at Natick MA or something like that. As you can tell, I use Gmail more than that, but
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, seeing no other questions for Alan at this point, I think it's be a great time to move over to conversation with Kathryn Kelly. I've noticed that in the meantime, a couple more folks have joined us. Paul Piccoli, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, I apologize, and Wayne Gates. Paul and Wayne, if you're at your computers and want to come off mute, we started with super brief introductions of each of ourselves. So we'd love to have each of you, if you want, just say a couple of words about who you are.
Sure. This is Wayne Gates, live at 10 Nokomis Way, and I've been a Natick resident for 25 years. I'm now retired.
Thanks, Wayne. Paul? Paul might be away from the computer, but that's okay. All right, so Kathryn, I'd like to turn it over to you. Take as much time as you'd like to any kind of an opening, statement, maybe why you're running, what you're hoping to achieve, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me today.
Yeah.
I know, sorry, I missed the original date that you had scheduled. I have been working with a new client and was launching a new climate tech startup. And unfortunately, that week was just crazy for me. But anyways, for those that don't know me, my name is Kathryn Kelly, and I was born in Natick at Leonard Morris Hospital. My family has called Natick home for over 70 years. My grandmother and my great-grandmother were both born in Natick, and my dad had a business in downtown for 50 years before retiring. He still lives in the same house in Natick that I grew up in. Though I spent decades in San Jose, California, living with my mom, I came back to Natick regularly, at least twice a year to visit. And in 2022, I decided to move my family back because I wanted my daughter to grow up in a safe, small town with great schools. And California had just started to really go downhill. So there was a lot of reasons to move and be close to family again. I have over 30 years of experience in working in the technology industry. I've worked at major tech companies like Yahoo and Apple and Meta and Roku before I started my own consulting firm in 2008 after my daughter was born. My experience spans public relations, marketing, event planning, and general business management. I've managed large teams and multi-million-dollar budgets at large public companies, working cross-functionally to drive results. And I'm adept at problem solving and cutting through bureaucracy to get things done, which are skills I think I could bring to the Natick Select Board. Community service runs deep in my family. From a young age, I was involved in activism. I have pictures of myself at 6 years old, standing on the steps of the Boston State House, holding signs to protest lead paint with my mother, who worked at a nonprofit that helped to ban it. I've dedicated my time over the years to causes that matter to me, including volunteering with animal rescue nonprofits, the Humane Society, and the ASPCA. After becoming a mother, I became deeply involved in my daughter's school in San Jose. I served on the school site council board for 3 years at her elementary school, working closely with the principal to enhance the academics, adopting technology, like first bringing in the Chromebooks, budgeting and safety. And I was also the silent auction chair for 5 years at the school, raising almost $20,000 a year that helped pay for field trips and bus transportation and things like that, that in California, they don't have money for. I also campaigned for a $39 million tax override for our school district to help pay for security fencing for all of our schools, as well as build a new cafeteria for my daughter's elementary school. I'm also an advocate for gun safety as a member of the Moms Demand Action. I've attended marches in Washington, D.C. and rallies in Boston, Additionally, I was a volunteer for the Girl Scouts for 5 years and led troop meetings and organized overnight camps and other events for them. And I served on 2 different homeowners associations in California as president and secretary in different places that we lived. As a registered independent, I believe in balanced leadership that prioritizes the interests of everyone. I'm running for select board because I love Natick, and I believe our town government needs more balanced decision-making. Select board members, to me, need to consider everyone in town, not just people that buy into their ideology or beliefs. I think that decision-making needs to be based on the data and what's best for all tax-paying residents, not just political action committees. As I've attended town meetings and spoken with residents, including town committee members over the past 5 months, I've heard from many residents who feel their voices and opinions no longer matter in Natick, and that they feel like the decisions being made by the select board do not reflect their beliefs or needs. And many worry about speaking up against current town leaders or decisions that are being made for fear of being attacked or ostracized. I don't claim to, have all the answers about town government, but I do think, I bring decades of experience solving complex challenges in fast-paced Silicon Valley tech industry. And as a consultant, I've worked with over 50 different startups across various industries. When I take on a new client, I have to quickly learn new technology and, all about their business and execute on a timeline and within budget. And I think I can apply all of that to my experience in town government. I'm committed to preserving Natick's small town charm while ensuring that all voices, especially those of longtime residents, are respected and valued. And I'd like to bring a fresh, balanced perspective to the select board. Some of the goals that I personally would like to work on if I were to be elected is learning more about town governance and really learning from the folks that have been in their roles for a long time. I know there's a lot of institutional knowledge with these folks, and I would love to work across the aisle with everybody to get up to speed as quickly as possible on the most pressing issues and top priorities for the town. I'd also like to focus on revitalizing downtown. As a kid growing up there, we used to love hanging out in the common, and I feel like there's just so much opportunity for our town to really make downtown Natick a destination with great restaurants and shopping and nightlife. And one other passion that I have, and I really appreciate I think it's Pat Conaway that does the cleanup in Natick. I too do not like trash and litter, and every time I walk my dog, bring a bag with me to pick up trash in my neighborhood because it drives me crazy. And I feel like there is a lot of blight in Natick that could be a deterrent from attracting quality businesses to set up shop. There are a couple different properties on Route 9 that look horrible and seem to be sitting there for years and years and years, and nothing has been done to tear them down or fix them up. And I think that just does not reflect well on Natick when you're driving through our town on Route 9. And then just even around town, there's lots of different old shops that have tons of broken down cars or litter and other kind of junk sitting on their property. And it feels like that Natick should think about considering some sort of blight ordinance or rules around what you can store on your property that's facing the street that people see, because I do think that definitely deters from businesses wanting to bring their business to Natick or open up shop in Natick. So I hope you'll consider me for select board. I know probably most of you have already voted. Unfortunately, this election got away from me. The timing, sometimes have nothing to do, and other times I'm crazy busy with my business. So it just wasn't possible for me to join a lot of the meetings. But that's a little bit about me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you for that intro. And I see Donna is modeling the raise hand function, which we'd like to have people use that to ask their questions in order. Donna, do you want to go ahead and ask something?
I do, and thank you so much for being here. And I have not yet voted. I guess I'm traditionalist, waiting till election day. But what you said raises some questions for me. Can you give an example or two of how you think the current select board doesn't reflect the wishes of the town and is ideological? I think you said they were ideological, or I I don't know the exact word you used, but maybe if you give us one or two examples of how you see them not reflecting the desires of the town. Thanks.
Sure. I think, one of the reasons I stepped up to get involved was started when the town was pushing through the immigration policies that they wanted to announce. And, I lived in San Jose the last 20 years of my time there. This city was a sanctuary city. And I spoke up at one of the town meetings about what comes along with becoming a sanctuary city. And I know that the select board claims that the immigration policies that they wanted to pass did not make us a sanctuary city, but the same policies that we passed, San Jose originally passed before they made it law 10 years later. And I saw what becoming a sanctuary city did to a once the most beautiful city in California to live in became. And it was one of the reasons why we left there, was to get away from it. And so I think that, people tried to stand up and voice their opinion. And I know a lot of people didn't even know about the policies, because unfortunately, a lot of people don't pay attention to town government, and, myself included up until the last year or so. But I think that those decisions did not take into account a lot of the town. And after that decision was made, I had so many residents reach out to me, and that's pretty much what started my campaign, is that, there's a silent majority of people that just don't feel the same, and they just don't feel like they're being heard, because there's a very loud group of people that every time people speak up, they get shut down. And so that's one example that I think really opened my eyes to the fact that not everybody felt or feels the same way. I also think, the affordable housing is another big issue. While we know that we do need affordable housing, and that the town is doing everything they can to stay at that 10% threshold, there are a lot of people here that can't afford $1 million home and want to build $1 million or $2 million home. And it feels like the select board is, because of their passion about affordable housing, is making decisions that do not reflect what a lot of the other town members would like to see. And, one of those decisions was selling Auburn Street for $100 to make it 100% affordable housing. And that, that property could have been sold for over $2 million. And so I think there's just these decisions that feel like they're being made in a little bubble, not taking consideration that, we need the tax revenue in order to fund other things in the town. And now we're looking at an override because we don't have that tax revenue. And so I think those are the two, big examples that I've heard from people that have reached out to me, including many town members. Town meeting members. So I think it's not just like hearsay in the neighborhood. I've been contacted by lots and lots of people.
Thanks for providing those examples, Kathryn. And I see that someone at MetroWorks wants to ask a question.
I think just me at present. Yeah, you kind of answered, partly answered one of my questions, but I think one thing we always ask candidates for select board, most of them have had some experience working in town government and other boards prior, what their experience has been and so forth. I believe you haven't been directly on a board, but you've advocated for positions, and you can correct me if you're wrong. So you have some sense of town government by trying to get some of your views heard.
Well, I was on a board. I was on the school council board in California. I mean,
California,
I wasn't, it's not a town board, but it is a, you know, government board. And so I was on that for 3 years. That's one of the boards I was on. I mean, I've been on, like I said, homeowners. We owned a home in Southern California, and I was on the board of the homeowners association, and that was a you know, gated community with 300 homes, and I was the president of that board.
And how long have you been back in Natick, Kathryn? I know you.
Yeah, we moved back. This August will be 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe in follow up to Martin's question, in the 5 years you've been in Natick, have you been serving on local offices of any kind, of town meeting member or anything, or?
No, I have not joined any boards here. No.
Mm-hmm.
I want to follow up too, and Judy has a question too, but the other follow-up is, even though you haven't served on a board in Natick, I guess you've gained familiarity to some extent with the process, and I take it there's problems with that process. So how can Natick be more responsive to all points of view? I guess, is that a fair question? And, you know, how have you tried to do that, and how do you expect to do that if you get elected?
Well, I think that just having somebody with a different viewpoint, and you know, I hate to bring politics into it, but it is a political different viewpoint of what we should do in Natick, right? And for the residents. And so it does feel like, even when I sit in these meetings and I sit in other meetings or watch meetings, there does seem to be a echo chamber, what I call an echo chamber, that everybody agrees with the same thing. And there really isn't anybody that stands up and says, wait, I don't agree with that. I have a different opinion. And so I think just having, and when I look across the select board, I feel like that's the same case. And it, you know, I think just by having at least one voice on there that could raise questions or, you know, other concerns without just going along with everybody, could make a difference. And I've heard the same thing about town meeting over and over from people that are on town meeting.
We have a question over at MetroWorks. I don't know if someone else has a hand up, but we have a question also from Judy.
Hey, Kathryn, it's so nice to meet you. And I heard a little bit of your opinion and take on affordable housing in our community. I just wondered, what is your opinion or take on the housing crisis at the local, state, and national level? And what role, if any, do you think small communities like ours should or could play? How could we help if you think it is appropriate to help?
Yeah, I mean, I think Natick is doing their part. I do, you know, we're at the threshold of 10%. And I think, you know, when I look at all the buildings downtown that are being built right now, I think pretty much all of them have some sort of affordable housing worked into it. And I think that is appropriate. And anytime that we can do that, I would love to see affordable housing for seniors and veterans. That I just learned on this call today that, you know, there is potentially a development for veterans that could be in the works. And so, you know, 100% behind that. But I also think that we need to take that with also people that come here that want to buy a $2 million home and have the money to buy a $2 million home. And even if they have 2 to 3 kids, that tax revenue is going to help everybody in the town because it's going to pay for other things. And I feel like, you know, all the meetings that I've been to, I just keep hearing how, oh, we hate that they tear down these houses and build these, you know, McMansions, but that tax revenue is helping. The tax revenue from tearing down Elliott School or building the affordable housing there, that's not going to be as helpful for everybody in the town. And, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll be looking at another override. So I think that we need to do our part and stick to the law and be able to manage where we can put in affordable housing, but I don't think it should be at the detriment of the rest of the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your answer. I just wanted to make one point of clarity, and that is that the Elliott School won't be torn down as part of
Right, I was correct.
development there. I'm sure you knew that. I just wanted to make it clear in the group. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see Tom has his hand up and then Ricky after him, and then I've got a question myself, but Tom?
Yes, you mentioned when you were you left San Jose because, quote, it's gone to hell. Could you give some examples of what you mean when you say that?
Yes, sure. So like I said, I volunteered at my daughter's elementary school after I had I was a late mom, so I wasn't as involved in schools or government until I had a daughter, and then started volunteering at the school and started seeing how the budgeting for the illegal immigrants that were coming to our school districts was really affecting the quality of education, because we had classroom sizes in kindergarten at like 28 kids in a classroom. Half the class could not speak English. And so we needed aides for all of them, which we didn't have that budget. And so it just was constantly trying to help these kids that couldn't keep up or came into the country, couldn't speak English, and all the money was going to them. And I would sit in the class and volunteer and see these kids that were super smart and bored out of their mind because they just weren't being challenged, because all of the attention had to go to these kids. And, if you look at California, they spent billions of dollars through Jerry Brown, through billions of dollars at this problem. And California is no better off today with their education, because unfortunately these kids come from families where they don't get support at home. And so even though they go to school and they get up to speed, they go home to a family that does not speak English, and they can't help them with homework, or the parents are working 2 jobs just to be able to afford to live there. And so they don't get that support at home. And I just watched this happen, and it was really disheartening, especially when you live in a neighborhood where you're paying max taxes, and then you've got people coming in that aren't paying those kind of taxes to coming to your school and bringing down the test scores. It just affected all of that. The other thing I saw was that, we lived in San Jose is a very wealthy city, and we lived in, a typical house there is, you can't touch a house for less than $2 million now. We didn't pay that, but we lived in the neighborhood that we lived in. And yet I watched burglaries in my neighborhood constantly. I had one of my senior neighbors attacked by some gang members one day when he's walking his dog. You can't go to the store without tripping over homeless people. The entire parking lot of Target and Starbucks is full of homeless drug addicts living out of their cars. Crazy people walking down the street with shopping carts full of crap and screaming and yelling and swearing, and just all of that just became, unbearable. And that's the main reason we moved back here, was to get away from it. The amount of money you spend to live there and have to deal with that on a daily basis, I did not want my child to grow up seeing that every day. And so that's what comes with a sanctuary city. And, if you look at Framingham, I know that, the select board was saying that those types of things are not going to happen. We're a small town, people can't afford to live here. Well, San Jose is the most expensive city in the country to live. And they have over 300,000 illegal immigrants living there. So that's totally, not true that they wouldn't come to live in Natick. They come to live in expensive cities because there's work and because the schools are good and they want to put their kids in schools. And just, I was looking at some news articles last night about Framingham, and, everybody considers them a sanctuary city, even though they haven't declared that as a law. Just in the last 2 months, they have arrested a child rapist. They have arrested 3 men last week or 3 or 4 men that were running an illegal pharmacy for the last 4 years out of their apartment and making hundreds of thousands of dollars and not paying taxes. And then they just arrested 3 more men that were a transnational crime syndicate that were, dealing weapons, fentanyl, and other drugs. That's just since February of this year in Framingham. So I just wanted, to raise awareness that this is what happens. And I know most of the people that have lived here a long time, Natick is a bubble and it's very safe and we think it could never happen here, but it can. And I'd hate to see that happen. I mean, I moved here to get away from it and I'd hate to see it happen.
We can certainly hear a lot of passion in
Yeah.
your
I
responses
mean,
about
it's,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to Ricky, and then I know I've got a question or two of my own. Ricky, you're on mute again. If you can find that.
Okay. Hello, Kathryn. We haven't met, but our paths have crossed somehow on the subject of immigrants. And I understand that you had a problem with my expressing my opinion to the Board of Selectmen on the subject. Is that true?
Yeah, yes, actually it is, Erica. I think you have met my husband when you lived in Natick, but I do have issue with somebody that's not living in our town coming to our meetings and telling us how to run our town. Even today, you know, about talking about affordable housing. I just don't understand why somebody that does not live in the town, does not pay taxes here, should be affecting our town governance.
Well, let me explain to you why I am still interested and involved, and I still care about the town of Natick. I am a survivor of the Holocaust, and I have been a refugee. I have been an enemy alien. I have been homeless. When I came to America at the age of 10, I came to a place that I understood would see me as a human being, would see me as someone who is equal to someone who has lived here as a human being, and that I would have the opportunity, as everyone else in this country should, to fulfill my potential. The town of Natick saw me as such a person. In the beginning, there was an attitude, I think, such as yours, by people who were born here, who did not want to see people who weren't born here living in the town. After about 10 years of active participation, not waiting until I had children in the schools, but working for the town individually as a volunteer, I was elected as the first woman selectman in the history of the town. Its 200+ year history. And I value that participation as the most important event outside of meeting my husband and having my children, as the most important event of my life. This town accepted me, this town trusted me, and this town gave me the opportunity to work on its behalf, on behalf of the people of Natick, those who have long histories in the town and those who are brand new. I served 3 terms on the Board of Selectmen. I was a town meeting member for 40 years. I worked for 12 years on the Housing Authority, and I continue to work on behalf of the people of Natick, whether I live in Natick or not. And I resent your attitude that denies me freedom of speech in a community that I still care about, and whether I pay tax to it. I have paid more taxes to the town of Natick than you will ever pay. So I think you need to modulate your attitude, because you live in a new community, and don't be arrogant with respect to your technical expertise and your managerial expertise. We are seeing how that operates on a federal level, and it's not good.
obviously heartfelt, Ricky, if you want to respond, Kathryn, but,
Yeah.
and then I do want to kind of open it up to further questions and topics, so.
I mean, I totally respect you. You know, I love that you were the first woman select board member and have done so much for Natick. And I really appreciate that. But I think everybody deserves an opinion. And I didn't stop you from speaking at the meeting. I just questioned, why do we allow it on any topic, not just immigration? Why do we allow people to influence our town politics if they're not paying taxes in the town? That just does not make sense to me. So, and, you know, I think that the other point is, you know, my grandfather immigrated here too, and he did it the right way. So we're not talking about immigrants. When I talk about concerns about a sanctuary city, that's not talking about legal immigrants. I am referring to illegal immigrants. And the illegal immigrants that are coming today are not the same immigrants that came 50, 60 years ago. And that's where I think a lot of people get confused, and you know, that whole conversation gets muddied. And so that's just my response in you know, my opinion.
So I'm seeing a couple of hands up, and I'm guessing we could use easily all the rest of our time talking about immigration. It's certainly a complex and an issue that folks have strong opinions about. And we can return to that, but there's I want to ask one question that's maybe kind of a two-part, and then we can move on to Tom, and then I think actually Susan had her hand up first, and then Tom. But a generalized question with maybe a specific example. You, Kathryn, in your opening comments, you kind of talk about, has the select board done enough to hear the voices of everybody in town? And in general, I just, for any major decision that the town has to make, everybody may have an opinion about it. So one approach is whatever the majority of people want, that's what the town should do. But another opinion is, well, no, based on my, particular skills and responsibilities of being on a board, on the select board, there's a decision that's the right decision for the town. That's not just a popularity decision. So I guess I'd just ask, how do you go about trying to strike the right balance between bringing expertise and, what's the right decision versus just what's the popular decision? And then if another huge issue for the town that we're faced with tomorrow's election is, are we going to approve this $7 million override? And I'm curious if you've got an opinion about that, of either the process that's been used, in particular, how well that did or did not take everybody's opinions and input into effect.
I actually think they've done a great job with the override. There's been, you know, multiple meetings that I've attended, and there's been a ton of communication around it. And I think, you know, a lot of that was a result of the fact that a lot of people were upset about the immigration policies and the lack of communication on that. And the short timing that they had to weigh in on it. I mean, there was like a survey for 48 hours that they offered to residents. So I actually think they did learn and had a much better process for the override. And I think people have had plenty of time to weigh in and ask questions and, you know, really, really feel heard. So I think that's been great. And I do recognize that, you know, you can't ask everybody about their opinion for every single little decision that the town has to make. But as long as they're making decisions based on data and facts, and not making decisions based on their personal beliefs or their passions and what they want to do with the town, then I think that, you know, that's the right way to run government. And I know in one of your other coffee talks, the idea of having the town broken up into different councils or different districts and having like a representative for each one of those districts has been brought up. And I actually really like that idea. And I think that's something that the select board should think about.
Okay, thanks. Susan and then Tom. Susan, you got to come off mute. There you go.
Hi, Kathryn. It's nice to meet you in person via Zoom with I can connect a name to a face. I heard what you said earlier, and I apologize to the moderators. I know we said, where do we come back to the question of immigration? The reason why I wanted to raise my hand was because you had mentioned that 50 years ago, things were different. And one of the things that I wanted to mention was that the reason why is about law. 50 years ago, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Immigration and Nationality Act in 1952, right after World War II. And it was the first time the United States had finally rejected the immigration of individuals based on quota systems. And those quota systems heavily favored Western Europeans at the expense of many others. At that time, it was decided to reject that concept. And then in 1965, that the removal of racial barriers was then replaced with a national origin criteria, which was then further replaced with a preference system to help families be reunited that had been some in the United States and some not in the United States. And it's that system that has been changed and modified administration after administration. That change in the preference system occurred in the 1980s or in 70s and 80s. And it now is what we find today to be one of the most arduous and difficult systems for immigration anywhere in the world. And because of that, people have a lot of confusion and worries and fears and concerns, both immigrants and non-immigrants alike, about what is actually the immigration process. So I wanted to go back to that point that you had mentioned about my parents or my grandparents or, folks we know from 50 years ago came in, quote unquote, the right way. The right way has changed many times over the decades, has become extremely complex, and is very difficult even for the most skilled and educated people to attempt to navigate, and is greatly in need of reform to be more equitable, to be more accessible for people to understand, and for people to gain benefits and consequences, both. So one of the things I wanted to do is to hopefully in the future connect with you and chat with you and talk to you about that, the future, and what that might mean in Natick in particular, so that we could move forward in a way that puts things sort of in a broader context and understanding. I appreciate that you said you had a personal experience, and we all have personal experiences that are different. And I don't want to jump to any conclusions about what your personal experience was like, but I hope that with some dialogue and just conversation, we might be able to have a better insight into what might make best sense for Natick. And I was wondering if you might be open to that.
Of having a conversation with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But, I just think everybody needs to, they have their opinion. I think that we can agree to disagree on things. I mean, to be honest, I would rather see my taxes go to helping veterans. I have veterans in my family that are, struggling financially. And then we see people coming here illegally and getting lots of free stuff. I saw it in California. I knew people doing it firsthand. And those are the things that don't sit well with me. And I think that a lot of taxpayers are fed up. We've, had to deal with it for the last 5 years, and everybody's hurting. And I just think that I don't know that you could ever change my mind on that after living, like I said, in a sanctuary city for 20 years and experiencing what I experienced. I think that I just think there needs to be, until our government fixes the system, I just don't see how it's going to change.
It fixes the system in terms of the policies of how.
Right. I mean, there's, like she said, it's just a mess, right? Everybody knows that. But every other administration changes the rules or changes, who can come in, who can't. And until that's fixed, I don't know that we have any control over it, but I do know that I do not want to support financially people that come here illegally. And my mind is not going to be changed on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Pretty definitive. Tom, and then also MetroWorks again. Tom? You got to come off mute there, Tom. Yeah.
First thing I do is I'm going to defend Ricky.
Hey, Tom, just before you get started on that too much, I do want to make sure that we use this as much as an opportunity for Kathryn to be asked questions and, but go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, Ricky has been a key person in Natick for many, many years. She has opinions but she doesn't make the laws. The select board does. She could give her opinion and respect her opinion because she's been here a while. Right? And second thing is, I believe even illegal immigrants, I don't like the fact that they're illegal, but they do work. And guess what? They pay taxes when they work. Money is taken out. It's not a free ride. Thank you.
You want to respond to that, Kathryn? And then we'll go to the MetroWorks.
I mean, we could talk about this all day long, right? But I gave an example. They just caught illegal immigrants running a pharmacy out of their apartment that had made hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. I highly doubt they were paying taxes on that. In California, I had lots of developer friends that build homes and they hire illegals and they pay them under the table. They're not paying taxes. So, I mean, there's plenty that are paying taxes and there's plenty that are buying things in our state and paying taxes. I understand all of that. It isn't just black and white. So I just don't think it's, worth continuing the discussion on that.
Yeah. Okay. MetroWorks and Paul and then Ricky. Was there someone at MetroWorks that wanted to speak?
A couple of people, yeah. I guess we're gonna have to kind of wind it down at some point, but Cindy.
Yeah, we are getting close to 10:30, and so that'll probably take care of the rest of our time. And I do want to let Kathryn also just kind of have a closing statement too, if she wants one. So.
Hey, Kathryn, I've just been sitting and noodling on your housing analysis. You brought up a couple of times your support for folks coming in and building $1.5 to $2 million homes or $1 to $2 million homes because they can afford it and because they'll pay their taxes and if they have a couple of kids that they put in the schools. And I'm still totally learning so much about housing and taxes and how everything works out. But I did a little math and I think that the per pupil expenditure in Natick is about $20,000 a year. And I did the math on, I know our taxes may or may not go up significantly after tomorrow. But right now, like a $1.5 to $2 million home would pay between $20,000 and $27,000 with property tax. So like if they have, one kid, then every tax dollar they're paying is being used up by the way that they're using our town just for the schools, let alone DPW and all of that. So actually those houses, I think, and if anybody on the call can correct me and I'm off base, please call me out on it. But it looks to me that like those houses would likely run us at a deficit for resources. If they have a couple of kids in the system. And I'm wondering, like, what are your ideas for making up that cost? that we might be losing out, in terms of how, the weight of their using the schools and, their property tax versus their property.
Okay, but that's taking, so couple things on that. So are you saying that the people that are going to move into affordable housing, 3-bedroom units aren't going to have 2 to 3 kids?
So those, to my understanding, those developments are so much bigger in value. And studies show that people who live in affordable housing use the schools at a far greater less rate. So that was
Lower.
far lower, right? Thank you. I can't see the far lower rate. So so that balances out in terms of what they're using. Also, like folks who live in denser housing are they basically have fewer children. It includes people who are retired, people who are you know, just up and coming, that kind of thing. And I'm not just talking about affordable housing, I'm just talking about that, you know, dense housing versus the $1 to $2 million homes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we have data on that. From what I heard the other day from one of the school board members or running for school board that also heard on this call, that she said that the student enrollment has been flat in Natick for years, and yet we have all these multi-million-dollar homes being built. I have 3 literally I can see from my house in my neighborhood. So I think that that's just not true. That because the house is big doesn't mean they're sending 2 to 3 kids to the school. But in addition to that, you know, if you go to Framingham where there's lots of dense housing, I think you see a lot of people that have 2 to 3 kids living in that housing, living in apartments. I mean, I know coming from California, the apartment complexes were definitely full of families and lots of kids, especially when it's immigrant families, because they will live multi-family together. So I just don't believe that's true.
I guess it was just more addressing that you held up the single family $1 to $2 million home as a way to build revenue, and I'm not following that.
Well, it sounds like the math isn't working.
As a way of like that we're gonna get more than other types of housing, I guess. And I didn't know if you had other.
Well, the housing that they're building for the Elliott School there. So first of all, 100% affordable housing development gets tax breaks that I don't personally get. That housing is going to, once it's filled, supposedly will be based on a $20 million development, whereas they could have built 10 to 11 $2 million homes there and those people would be paying top taxes, not getting a tax break. So that's an example.
Okay.
And yet that development's going to be using all the services, or if not more, from the town.
Thanks. I want to be mindful of the time.
Yeah, I honestly need to get to work. So
yeah, let's take Paul's question,
okay.
And then I want to give the floor back to you. In addition to responding to Paul's question, if you want to follow up with any concluding statements, and then I think we can draw it to a close. And really appreciate the time you've spent with us. So, Paul,
can I take a second and clarify a point that was made?
Well, we're really tight on time here, Donna.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can Donna, you can email me at my email address, Kathryn Kelly for select board at gmail. Four is the number 4, not FOR.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, you just need to come off mute if you wanted to speak. Paul.
He's trying to find the mute button.
Yeah.
down in the left corner.
Sorry, I didn't have a question.
No, I know. I'm sorry. The other Paul Carew, had his hand up. Who's looking for the mute button? There you go, Paul.
All right. I had that one. I admire your getting involved in running for the select board. I'm, as a former 3-time candidate for the select board, starting in 1999. I know how time consuming, not just standing out sidewalks, knocking on doors, but getting knowledge of what's going on in town. And there's a lot going on in town, and I just want to say that I was directly hired by the select board in 2010, and now I'm looking at dealing on a regular basis with the president select board, who I think are doing a great job. Just saying that. I'm very, very happy with the support, and you mentioned veterans more than once. Not many times people mention veterans. I'm a dinosaur of a veteran in Vietnam, 72 years old. I've done a lot of work with the videos and events and stuff, and I like the fact that you said it more than once. And I just have to say I've had great support from as a veterans leader in the town, state, and national. Great support, and so what I'm saying is we got a great select board. I ran when there wasn't such a great select board. 3 times I ran. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Well, it was broken back then, and I wanted to fix it, but I didn't get elected, unfortunately. Or as my wife and mother say, fortunately, you didn't get elected. But
Well, do you have a question that you're moving to, or are you?
I'm kind of. So kudos to my present members of the board, our present members of the board, and would you think, Kathryn, of running at a future date? Again, it ain't broken now, so it doesn't need fixing. Will you consider running at a future date?
Sure. I mean, if I don't win, maybe I'll run for town meeting. I mean, now that I've done this, definitely, and now that I've also attended a lot of different meetings, I went to the DPW session the other night, which I thought was awesome, and learned all about DPW and what they do for our town, and I was actually very impressed. I would love to dig into all the different departments in Natick, and yeah, I would. Are you DPW?
I'm the Director of Veteran Services.
Oh, yeah, I would love to get involved. And if you have any volunteer needs for the veterans, I would love to do things like that.
I do.
Great. I would love that. So for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kathryn, again, if you want to make any other closing statement, I mean, I think what's clear here is that from the conversation, I think it's clear that maybe some individual folks' views might differ from yours, but your whole candidacy seems to be based on making sure that the voters have a choice and understand what it is that you stand for. So any closing statement you'd like to make to that effect, and then we'll stop that portion because I know you need to get going as well. So
yeah, I really appreciate the time, Doug, and having me on, and glad I got to meet a lot of the different residents here. And again, I hope that we can bring a little more balance to the select board, and I look forward to volunteering in town and helping in any way that I can, no matter if I get elected or not.
yeah. Well, again, thank you for your time with us, and Alan as well. I don't know if he's still on or not, but Martin, maybe if you want to stop the recording now, and if folks have other comments they want to make, I'm going to have to drop off fairly shortly myself. But
Doug, I just want to know what Kathryn's position on the override is. When the question was asked, she didn't answer it.
Kathryn, do you want to weigh in? I know you said the discussion had been done well, but what do you think about yes or no?
Sorry, I didn't even catch that somebody asked that question. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
No, they did.
Yeah, like I said, I worked on an override in San Jose to raise $39 million for my school's district. And typically I would be a yes for that, because I 100% believe in investing in schools. I think that without strong schools, you don't have a good town, and you don't have great home values, right? That's really what keeps your home values. But I think that, you know, I don't agree with a lot of the financial decisions that the select board has made over the last few years. So it's really hard for me to support it.
So you don't support it?
No.
Okay, I just want to, as a matter of information, it has been 17 years
I
since the
understand.
town of Natick has had an operational override. Any other overrides have been specifically bonded ones for the Wilson School, for Bennett Hemingway, for the high school, and for the Kennedy. So this is the first time that the town has had an operational override, and that means that it has managed its finances in a very fiscally conservative way over the years to avoid the necessity for that. So I think you can feel confident that at this point, the necessity is there and that supporting the override is in the best interest of the town.
Yeah. I do want to let
Thank you.
Kathryn go.
I need to run. Yeah, sorry, but it was great meeting everybody. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Kathryn.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Keep it coming.